In a quiet countryside town named Larkwood, the evening air was filled with the soft chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Inside a modest but cozy home, a woman named Mrs. Everly bustled into the drawing room, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Her husband, Mr. Everly, sat comfortably by the fireplace, reading the latest issue of The Observer. "Have you heard the news?" Mrs. Everly exclaimed, not waiting for an answer. "Rosefield Manor has been let at last." Mr. Everly did not look up from his paper. "Has it now?" "Yes," she said with growing impatience. "To a wealthy young gentleman from the northern counties. He arrived just yesterday with an entourage of servants and carriages. Can you believe it? The manor hasn't seen such activity in years." "And what, my dear, does this have to do with us?" Mr. Everly asked, knowing full well what was coming. Mrs. Everly put her hands on her hips. "Don't play dumb with me, Charles. We have 4 unmarried daughters. 4. And a rich, eligible bachelor moves in just a few miles away. It is practically divine intervention. Perhaps he prefers solitude and has no intention of marrying," he said dryly. Mrs. Everly gasped. "Nonsense. Men with that kind of fortune, 15,000 a year, they say, are always in want of a wife. And I intend that one of our girls be that wife." Mr. Everly finally set down his paper. "And how do you propose to make that happen?" "Well, obviously, you must pay him a visit first. It would be quite improper for me to introduce myself." He chuckled. "You've planned it all out, haven't you?" "I have. I even heard his name." Mr. "Sebastian Langley. Sounds distinguished, doesn't it?" At that moment, the girls entered the room one by one. Clara, the eldest and most serene, Iseult, witty and observant, Lena, full of laughter, and Myra, the dreamer, always with a book in her hand. They all perked up at the mention of a new neighbor. "Do you think he's handsome?" asked Lena eagerly. "And young?" Myra added. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Mama, you haven't even met him." "True, Mrs. Everly replied. "But a man with that kind of wealth must be handsome, don't you think? Or at least tolerable. And with his own manner. He's likely to host grand parties, balls, dinners, perhaps even a summer picnic." Mr. Everly stood and stretched. "Well then, I suppose I must go greet the poor man and warn him what he's in for." "You will?" Mrs. Everly's face lit up with joy. Indeed. If only to secure a place for myself on his guest list, he teased. The next morning, Mr. Everly rose early and, without a word to anyone, made his way to Rosefield Manor. He was met by a butler in fine livery and introduced to Mr. Langley himself, who turned out to be more charming than even Mrs. Everly had imagined. Young, tall, and fair, with an easy smile and genuine warmth, Sebastian Langley welcomed the elder gentleman with grace. By the time Mr. Everly returned, the household was in a flurry. Did you meet him? What is he like? What did he say? The girls asked all at once. He's more than tolerable, Mr. Everly answered with a grin. He's delightful. And I believe you'll all meet him soon enough. Mrs. Everly clapped her hands. Oh, what a wonderful beginning to the season. But as the family celebrated, Isla stood quietly by the window, gazing out toward the horizon. She had no desire to marry for money or position. If love ever came for her, it would have to be real, something rare, something deep. Little did she know, the arrival of Mr. Langley was only the first ripple in a tide of events that would stir the quiet world of Larkwood and forever change the lives of the Everly family. The village of Larkwood was alive with gossip. Ever since word spread that Mr. Sebastian Langley had taken residence at Rosefield Manor, the social circle buzzed with anticipation. The dressmakers were overrun with orders, pianoforte music echoed from drawing rooms, and every household with eligible daughters seemed to have rediscovered the art of perfect tea service. Sir William and Lady Aldridge are planning a welcome ball, Clara informed the family one morning, passing around the invitation. At the Assembly Hall, next Friday. Mr. Langley will be there. Mrs. Everly nearly dropped her cup of tea. A ball. At last, civilization returns to Larkwood. Girls, we must begin preparing immediately. I suppose this means you'll finally speak to Mr. Langley yourself, Mr. Everly teased. Oh hush, Charles. The moment we are introduced, I'll be nothing but gracious, she declared, already mentally designing gowns and hairstyles for her daughters. But not everyone shared her enthusiasm. That afternoon, Isla retreated to the orchard behind their house with her book. The scent of ripening pears mixed with autumn leaves filled the air. She wasn't like her sisters. She wasn't thrilled by the idea of dancing with a stranger. Her mind wandered far beyond ballrooms toward poetry, distant lands, and quiet moments of sincerity. Suddenly, she was startled by a rustle. A golden retriever burst from the hedges, chasing a red squirrel. Isla backed up, laughing. Douglas. Stop that. A man's voice called out. She turned and there he was. Sebastian Langley, in a navy riding coat, dismounted from a grey stallion, trying to get a hold of his over-enthusiastic dog. It was an almost comical scene, but Isla stood frozen, caught between amusement and curiosity. "I'm terribly sorry," he said, catching the dog by the collar. "He's got no manners." Much like his owner, apparently. "Not at all," Isla replied, surprised at how calm her voice sounded. "He just gave me a reason to stop reading the same paragraph for the 5th time." Sebastian tilted his head. "And what book, may I ask, was so resistant to being read?" "The Sorrows of Young Werther." A bit melancholy for such a bright day. He smiled, but then something flickered in his eyes, a shadow. "I see. I never finished that one." Perhaps it was too much truth, too quickly. Before Isla could respond, "Mrs. Everly's voice rang out from the house. "Isla, come inside now." Isla winced. "Duty calls," she said, nodding slightly before turning to go. "Wait," Sebastian called after her. "Will I see you at the ball?" She looked over her shoulder. "If I attend," she said, "I'll make sure my dog is better behaved." Sebastian laughed, and Isla felt a strange fluttering in her chest. Back at home, Mrs. Everly bombarded her with questions. "Was that him? Did he say anything? Did he ask about your sisters?" "No, mother. He asked about my book." "Well, Mrs. Everly said, slightly disappointed, I suppose it's a start." Meanwhile, inside the grand halls of Rosefield Manor, Sebastian wrote a letter to his closest friend, Julian Wexley, a witty yet critical gentleman who had served with him briefly in the city's diplomatic circles. "Julian. The countryside offers a strange peace, disrupted only by women who judge you before they know you and dogs who embarrass you before breakfast. I've met a girl, Isla Everly. Different from the rest. Clever. Observant. Mysterious. I don't know if I like her or if I'm afraid I might." Julian's reply would come later, and with it, a storm. But for now, the people of Larkwood were preoccupied with the upcoming ball. Dresses were hemmed, shoes polished, rumors exchanged like currency. And Isla. She stared out her window at the stars that night, wondering why the thought of seeing him again unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The night of the Aldridge Ball arrived with all the pomp and fluttering anticipation that the villagers of Larkwood could muster. Lanterns lit the path leading to the grand stone Aldridge Hall, casting golden reflections on the fountain out front. Carriages lined the driveway, and from inside, the sound of violins and laughter spilled into the night air. Inside, crystal chandeliers sparkled like constellations. The Everly family arrived fashionably early, at least according to Mrs. Everly, who fussed over each of her daughter's hair until the final moment. Clara looked radiant in pale blue silk. Lena wore a gown with embroidered roses, and Myra floated in ivory tulle. But it was Isla, in a dark forest green dress with a silver ribbon in her hair, who drew the most subtle but certain glances. Sebastian Langley stood near the refreshment table, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal coat. He was already surrounded by curious glances and ambitious smiles, but he held himself with casual grace. When Isla walked in, his posture shifted imperceptibly, shoulders lifting, eyes focusing. "There she is," he murmured, almost without realizing it. "You look like a man staring at a battlefield, not a dance floor," came a voice beside him. Sebastian turned. His friend, Julian Wexley, had arrived. Tall, composed, and undeniably striking, Julian had a reputation that preceded him: distant, clever, and unapologetically blunt. Dressed in black with a silver cravat, he surveyed the room with amused disdain. "Julian," Sebastian smiled. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I needed the air," Julian said. "And the entertainment. Small towns are curious places." His eyes landed briefly on Isla. "Let me guess. That's the clever one." Sebastian didn't answer. He didn't need to. Soon, the dancing began. The room swirled with color as couples spun under candlelight. Myra was the first to be asked to dance, followed quickly by Lena. Clara engaged in quiet conversation with a gentleman near the fireplace. Isla stood alone, sipping a glass of punch, and very nearly enjoying her solitude until a voice spoke beside her. "I was hoping you'd be here." She turned. Sebastian offered his hand. "Would you honor me with a dance?" Isla hesitated for just a second longer than expected. Then, quietly, she placed her hand in his. Their dance was graceful but silent at first. Isla spoke only once they had completed a turn. "I thought you didn't like dancing," she said with a small smirk. Sebastian looked momentarily startled. "Who told you that?" "You did," she said. "By the way you stared at the floor when the music began." He laughed. "Observant." "Again." "Habit." As the dance continued, Julian watched from the shadows, unimpressed. He turned to a nearby woman and said, "I find the evening tolerable, if one ignores the music." The woman laughed awkwardly. Isla overheard the remark and turned slightly toward Sebastian. "Is that your friend?" "Yes." "Julian Wexley." "Don't mind him. He has a poet's soul and a cynic's tongue." When the dance ended, Isla gave Sebastian a quiet nod and moved off to speak with Myra. Meanwhile, across the room, Mrs. Everly was practically glowing with delight. "Did you see that, Charles? Are Isla dancing with the richest man in 3 counties? Mr. Everly raised a brow. Indeed. And not once did she trip over her hem. A miracle. But the night wasn't all smiles and compliments. Later, in the hallway, Isla passed Julian. Their eyes met briefly, hers questioning, his unreadable. Then he gave a faint, almost dismissive bow and walked on without a word. There was something cold in him. Something Isla could not name. And deep down, despite the warmth of Sebastian's smile, she wondered what shadows he might carry too. That night, back at Rosefield Manor, Julian poured himself a glass of wine and sat by the fire. "She's clever," he said finally. "Too clever? You'd better be careful." Sebastian stared into the flames. "Maybe that's exactly what I need." And so, the first evening ended not with declarations of love or promises but with sparks, impressions, and the quiet, uncertain start of something much deeper. The sun rose lazily over Larkwood the morning after the Aldridge ball. Dew clung to the petals in the garden outside the Everly residence, and the household buzzed with quiet excitement. It was all anyone could talk about. "Well, Mrs. Everly demanded over breakfast. "What did you think of Mr. Langley, Isla?" Isla hesitated before answering. "I think, he's more polite than he pretends to be. And more reserved than he wants to show." "Poetic nonsense," said Claro lightly. "He was utterly charming. And very interested in you. He danced with me." "That's all," Isla said, buttering her toast. "Mrs. Everly sighed as if it were the end of an era. "You have no imagination, child." "None. One does not waltz with the wealthiest man in the county by accident." Mr. Everly looked over his newspaper and added, "Unless she tripped and he caught her." "I didn't trip," Isla muttered, but the smile tugging at her lips betrayed her. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the village, Rosefield Manor had its own discussions. "You danced twice," Julian pointed out over breakfast with a pointed look. "That's practically a proposal in country standards." Sebastian sipped his tea calmly. "Once." Julian raised an eyebrow. "So it felt like two." "That's revealing." "I like her," Sebastian said plainly. "She's not like the others." "That's what they all say before they marry someone dull," Julian muttered. "Mark my words. Clever girls are like fire, beautiful, yes, but they burn." Sebastian's response was simple, "Then perhaps I've grown tired of the cold." A few days later, the Everly family received word, Sir William and Lady Aldridge were hosting a smaller, informal gathering at their estate. Mr. Langley would attend again. This time, however, it was said he would bring a few acquaintances including Mr. Wexley, Mrs. Everly's eyes gleamed. Two gentlemen of wealth and reputation in one salon. What luck. Isla felt a strange twist in her stomach. She hadn't expected to see Julian again so soon, and certainly not in so intimate a setting. There was something in his gaze, the way it passed over people without resting, that made her feel analyzed. At the gathering, the atmosphere was less formal but no less charged. The drawing room at Aldridge Hall was filled with soft music and small clusters of conversation. Isla found herself in a quiet corner, discussing philosophy with a well-read neighbor when Julian approached. "Miss Everly," he said smoothly. "You've grown more popular by the hour." She glanced up, eyes narrowing. "Only with those who enjoy books, apparently." Julian smiled faintly. "Books are loyal, true. But they rarely dance." "You'd be surprised," Isla replied. "If you read the right ones." Julian laughed softly. "Touché. I suppose I was warned." "Warned?" "That you were sharp-tongued," he said. "And not easily impressed." "Not easily deceived either," she added, tilting her head. The tension in the room grew, not from volume, but from the silence that followed. He looked at her curiously, as if trying to see through her, then gave a small, ironic bow and walked away. Later that evening, Clara and Myra sat with other young women, speaking in hushed voices. "Did you see how Mr. Wexley dismissed her?" One whispered. "Some say she insulted him." "I heard she embarrassed him in front of the hostess," another said. The rumor spread like smoke. Isla was unaware until she noticed the change. Polite smiles, shorter conversations, and glances exchanged behind fans. When she finally confronted Clara, her sister looked apologetic. "It's just, people like stories. Especially ones with a clever heroine and a wounded gentleman." "So I'm the villain now?" "No," Clara said gently. "But maybe they don't want you to be the main character." That night, Isla stood by the garden gate, staring into the stars. The night was cold, but her cheeks burned with quiet fury. She had never wanted to be the center of attention. And now that she was wrongly, it felt isolating. Behind her, a voice, "Rough night." She turned. Sebastian stood there, hands in his coat pockets. "People think I slighted your friend," she said without preamble. "Julian can manage his pride. He has plenty of it." "Do you?" she asked, searching his face. He paused. "More than I used to. Less than I should." Their eyes met in the quiet. Will you believe what others say about me? Isla asked, barely more than a whisper. No, Sebastian said. But I will believe what you say. She exhaled slowly. Then let me be honest, I don't know what I want from you. But I don't want misunderstandings. Neither do I, he said. And I won't let others speak for me. Or for you. Isla nodded. A moment passed. Then, suddenly, Sebastian smiled. But if you do intend to wound him again, aim slightly lower. His pride is stored in his collarbone. Isla laughed a real, light, uncontrolled laugh that surprised even herself. For the first time in days, the tension eased. Not resolved. Not forgotten. But seen, and shared. And in the shadows of Aldrich Hall, Julian Wexley watched from a distance, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. A cold wind swept through Larkwood as autumn deepened. The trees shed their leaves like old secrets, and the days grew shorter, perfect for gossip to grow longer. In the Everly home, Mrs. Everly paced the drawing room with a letter in hand. He's coming. He's actually coming. Who's coming? Myra asked, peeking up from her embroidery. Your cousin, Mrs. Everly said dramatically. Mr. Percival Thornfield. Never heard of him, Lena muttered. He's our distant relative from the city, their mother explained. Your late uncle arranged for him to inherit this house should your father, you know. No, I don't know, said Isla flatly. Mrs. Everly ignored her. The point is, we've never met him, but he is next in line to take this property. Which is why she waved the letter. He wishes to visit and become better acquainted with our family. Mr. Everly chuckled from his armchair. I suppose that means he's looking for a wife. Exactly, said Mrs. Everly, triumphant. And what better solution than to marry into the family that stands to lose the house to him? The daughters collectively groaned. You cannot be serious, Isla said. You want to marry one of us off to a man we've never met, simply to keep the house. Mrs. Everly put a hand on her chest. What else is marriage for? Mr. Percival Thornfield arrived on a Tuesday morning, dressed in a dark green coat and armed with an elaborate vocabulary. He was a lanky, awkward man in his early 30s, with an air of self-importance so strong it could have knocked over the front gate. It is my absolute honor to at last be among my delightful cousins, he declared upon arrival. What a pleasure it is to escape the dreariness of municipal work and find oneself in the bosom of true femininity. Lena nearly choked on her tea. During dinner, Percival monopolized the conversation. He spoke of urban tax policies, his superior knowledge of Greek grammar, and most of all, his recent acquaintance with Lady Ashcroft, a wealthy widow who had personally encouraged him to seek a modest but well-mannered wife in the countryside. "I believe marriage," he said while cutting his beef, "is an institution most conveniently managed when the wife is pliant, the husband firm, and the in-laws entirely removed." Mrs. Everly beamed. Isla nearly walked out. The next morning, Isla went for a walk along the riverbank, trying to clear her head. She had not expected Sebastian to be there, sitting on a rock and sketching in a small notebook. "You draw?" she asked, surprised. He smiled without looking up. "Sometimes. Mostly when I'm trying to avoid letters I don't want to reply to." "Letters from Julian?" "No. From my aunt. She wants me to marry a girl I don't know, and preferably one who looks good in oil paintings." Isla sat beside him. "Perhaps you could marry Percival Thornfield. He seems made for portraits." Sebastian chuckled. "I heard he's here." "He's unbearable," Isla said. "And mother believes he's here to propose. Probably to me." Sebastian's eyes darkened slightly. "And how do you feel about that?" "I feel like burning the drawing room down and blaming the fireplace." He really laughed, for the first time in weeks. But the laughter faded when she added, "Part of me wants to say yes, just to get it over with. To stop being an unmarried daughter in a household where your worth is measured by how well you pour tea." Sebastian turned serious. "Don't joke like that." She looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "You're not meant for people like him," he said. "You're not meant to be sold off." Isla blinked. "And you'd rather I wait for someone like you?" Silence. He looked down. "I'd rather you wait for someone who sees you clearly. That might be me. But if it isn't, let it at least be someone real." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Isla stood. "You'd better finish your drawing. And I should prepare to be politely proposed to." That evening, as expected, Mr. Thornfield asked for a private audience with Isla in the parlor. "My dear cousin," he began, with a rehearsed breath, "it is my singular honor to offer you my hand in marriage." Isla stared. "I assure you, this proposal is both rational and generous," he continued. "In marrying me, you retain your home, your station, and the blessing of Lady Ashcroft's favor." "And what," Isla said coolly, "do you gain, Mr. Thornfield?" "A wife of adequate charm, capable of bearing children and entertaining guests without attempting to outshine her husband in matters of logic or public speech." There was a pause. Then Isla rose. No. No. Percival blinked, baffled. Did you say no? I did. And if you mention logic again, I'll set fire to your trousers. She left the room without another word. Outside, the evening sky was dusky lavender. Sebastian stood near the gate, as if he had known she would come. You said no, he said. She nodded. To him. To the system. To everything they want me to pretend to be. He stepped forward. Then say yes to something else. I don't know what that is yet, she said honestly. Maybe we can find out together, he offered. And in that moment, as the wind stirred around them and the world seemed to hush, Isla realized that the beginning of love was not a declaration. It was a choice. A shared defiance. A spark. Behind the curtains, Mrs. Everly fainted from shock. And Mr. Percival Thornfield packed his bags the next morning, complaining of inexplicable country madness and hostile female intellect. The air in Larkwood had grown cold, and with it came a new kind of chill, one that had nothing to do with the weather. It started subtly. Isla noticed Sebastian had grown quieter. Their morning walks became less frequent. Their conversations more cautious. At first, she told herself he was simply busy, occupied with business matters. But the truth arrived one afternoon, in the form of a woman dressed in crimson silk and wearing a smile far too polished for the countryside. She arrived in a carriage so ornate it looked foreign against the muddy roads. Miss Vivian Haldhorn, announced the butler at Rosefield. She swept into the drawing room of Rosefield Manor with the confidence of a queen, her auburn hair pinned high and gleaming with gold accents. Behind her trailed two trunks and a maid who said nothing. Sebastian rose to greet her with a smile that Isla, watching from across the room, did not like. Vivian had been his childhood friend, rumors suggested more. They had grown up in adjacent estates, attended the same galas, shared fencing lessons and poetry books. She was a woman of the city, elegant, biting, and used to having the full attention of every room she entered. She wasted no time. So this is where you've been hiding, she said to Sebastian, her tone affectionate, but her eyes sharp. And here I was thinking you'd fallen into a ditch or married a baker's daughter. I've been enjoying the quiet, Sebastian said. And the company. Vivian's eyes flicked to Isla, standing politely near the hearth. I see. That evening, Isla returned home more thoughtful than usual. She tried not to let it trouble her the presence of a beautiful, wealthy woman who called Sebastian Bass and spoke French between sips of tea, but it did. It troubled her deeply. Myra noticed it first. She threatened you, didn't she? Her sister said gently as they sat on Isla's bed that night. She didn't have to, Isla replied. She just smiled. The following week, events escalated. Word spread that Sebastian was considering investing in Vivian's family's estate project, a set of new properties along the river. There were dinners he attended where Isla wasn't invited. Meetings she didn't know about. And always, Vivian was present. Julian, meanwhile, had taken a different approach. He made no secret of his disapproval of Isla. She's clever, he told Sebastian one evening. But cleverness can be a trap. Especially for a man like you. A man like me? Sebastian asked. A man who still cares what society thinks. Sebastian frowned. I don't care. You do, Julian said. We all do. We just lie about it. Isla received a letter 3 days later. It was unsigned, written in an elegant, unfamiliar hand. It read, "Beware the company you keep, Miss Everly. A gentleman's affection may be fleeting, but a ruined reputation is forever." She crumpled the paper with shaking fingers. But deep down, it wasn't the insult that stung, it was the fact that she wasn't sure who had sent it. Vivian. Julian. Or someone else entirely. The final blow came at the Governor's Ball, a lavish event held annually in the neighboring town of Wexmar. The Everly sisters were invited, along with Sebastian and his guests. Isla wore a gown of midnight blue. She looked radiant, though she didn't feel it. Her thoughts spun in restless spirals. As she entered the grand ballroom, she saw them, Sebastian and Vivian, dancing. It was nothing scandalous. No whispers or improper touches. Just a smooth, practiced waltz between two people who had done this many times before. But to Isla, it was betrayal. When Sebastian finally approached her later that night, she was already cold. "You danced with her," she said simply. "I did," he admitted. She asked. "And if I asked you to choose between us?" He paused. That pause was everything. "That's enough," Isla said, turning away. He reached for her hand, but she was already gone. Back at home, the world had narrowed. The fire crackled in the hearth, but Isla felt none of its warmth. Lena knocked on the door but was met with silence. Myro left a book of poems by her bedside. Mrs. Everly tried to offer tea, her solution for every crisis. But Isla said nothing to anyone. She wrote instead. He was not cruel. Not intentionally. But he let her believe. And then, he hesitated. And perhaps that hesitation was worse than a lie. Far away, in his study at Rosefield, Sebastian read her letter, the one she had sent back with the book he had lent her. It contained only one line. "I hope Vivian enjoys fencing lessons as much as I enjoyed pretending I wasn't falling in love with you." He closed the book. The air around him felt suddenly thin. Julian appeared in the doorway. "It's for the best," he said. "She'd have ruined you." Sebastian stared at the fire. "Maybe that's exactly what I needed." But the night gave no answers. Only silence. And the first true break between two people who had almost begun something real. The following weeks in Larkwood felt like walking through a fog. Whispers followed Isla wherever she went. Eyes darted away when she entered a room, and smiles were forced and brief. The lingering shadow of the governor's ball had turned a once lively young woman into a quiet, distant figure. Mrs. Everly tried to rally the family's spirits, but even her boundless optimism seemed to falter. Clara's kindness was a balm, and Myra's innocent chatter provided occasional light, but Isla's heart remained heavy with doubt and hurt. One evening, as amber leaves drifted slowly from the trees outside, Mr. Everly summoned the family to the study. His face was grave. "There's talk of a better opportunity up north, in Maplewood," he began. "A chance to start fresh, away from gossip and expectations." Isla looked up sharply. "Maplewood?" "Yes. A small town surrounded by forests and lakes. Quiet, peaceful. I've received word that a merchant there seeks a capable partner to manage his estate's affairs." Mrs. Everly's eyes sparkled with the possibility. A fresh start. New people, new stories. "But what about Sebastian?" Isla asked softly, the name catching in her throat. "Sebastian has his own path, Mr. Everly said. "But you have yours. Sometimes, the best choice is to walk away before the storm consumes you." The decision was made. Packing began in earnest. Boxes of books, dresses, and cherished mementos piled up. Isla found herself standing by the window on the final night, gazing at the familiar skyline one last time. She clutched a letter from Sebastian, left unopened since the ball. Outside, the gentle hoot of an owl echoed a quiet farewell. The journey to Maplewood was long and winding. The carriage rattled over uneven roads as the landscape slowly shifted from rolling fields to dense woodlands. On the third day, during a rest stop by a sparkling river, Isla and Myra sat beneath a towering oak. Myra, ever perceptive, broke the silence. "Do you think Sebastian will come after you?" Isla shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe he's waiting for me to prove I'm worth the fight." Myra smiled softly. "He's lucky to have you. And you, him." Isla smiled faintly, though a flicker of uncertainty remained. Maplewood was everything Larkwood was not: quiet, unpretentious, and wrapped in nature's embrace. The merchant's estate, owned by a man named Mr. Elias Hargrave, was surrounded by gardens and orchards, with the scent of pine and fresh earth in the air. Mr. Hargrave was a tall, serious man in his 40s, with eyes like storm clouds and a voice that carried the weight of responsibility. He greeted Isla with a nod of approval. "We need someone who can see the heart of this place and protect it." Isla's days quickly filled with work managing accounts, coordinating trades, and learning the rhythms of the land. Yet, amidst the new duties, her thoughts often wandered back to Larkwood and the tangled web she had left behind. One afternoon, as she walked through the orchard, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she found Sebastian standing there, hands in his coat pockets, a tentative smile on his lips. "I thought you might not want to see me," he said. Isla studied him. The man before her was changed, not the polished gentleman of the ball, but someone real, vulnerable. "I didn't come all this way to fight," Sebastian continued. "I came because I realized I was wrong to doubt you, to let others' opinions cloud what I feel." Isla's heart fluttered, but her voice was steady. "It's not easy to trust again." "I know," he said softly. "But I'm willing to try." "If you are." For a moment, the world held its breath. Then Isla reached out, taking his hand. As the sun dipped below the Maplewood horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, two souls tentatively began to heal, finding in each other not just love, but hope. And though the path ahead was uncertain, together, they felt ready to face whatever storms might come. The crisp air of early winter settled over Maplewood, wrapping the town in a quiet stillness broken only by the occasional crackle of firewood and the soft murmur of the nearby river. Rosefield Manor felt worlds away now, distant not only in miles but in memory. Isla found herself thriving in the rhythm of her new life. The estate under Mr. Hargrave's stewardship was demanding, but fulfilling. Each morning, she walked the orchards, her breath forming pale clouds, and each evening she pored over ledgers by candlelight. Yet despite the calm, shadows from Larkwood lingered in her heart, doubts seeded by rumors, whispers, and the sharp edge of jealousy. One afternoon, as Isla arranged flowers in the grand hall, a visitor arrived, a young woman with striking dark eyes and an air of confidence. Her entrance caused a ripple among the estate's staff, who exchanged curious glances. "I am Miss Genevieve Arden," she announced, her voice smooth yet carrying an undeniable command. "I have been sent by Mr. Hargrave to assist Miss Everly in managing the household." Isla regarded Genevieve cautiously. There was something both alluring and unsettling about her, a refined elegance masking ambition. That evening, Sebastian arrived, weary from travel. He greeted Isla with a warm smile, but noticed the new presence immediately. "Genevieve," Isla introduced. Sebastian nodded, a faint tension flickering in his eyes. Over the following days, Genevieve proved to be efficient but sharp-tongued, often questioning Isla's decisions with subtle barbs disguised as advice. One afternoon, during a meeting with Mr. Hargrave, Genevieve leaned close to Sebastian. "Her charm is undeniable," she whispered, eyes gleaming. "But the past, it has a way of creeping back." Sebastian's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Isla's nights grew restless. Dreams haunted by whispered accusations and shadowed figures invaded her sleep. During a walk by the frozen river, Sebastian caught her hand. "We can't outrun our past, Isla," he said softly. "But together, we can choose how it shapes us." She looked at him, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I want to believe that," she whispered. Just as hope blossomed, news arrived from Larkwood. A scandal involving Vivian Haldhorn had broken, shaking the social circles to their core. Rumors suggested her charm was a mask for ruthless ambition, and her influence over Sebastian's decisions was more manipulative than affectionate. Isla read the news with a mixture of sadness and vindication. Later, Genevieve approached her. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "the greatest battles are fought within." "You have strength, Isla. But strength can make enemies." Isla met her gaze. "And friends." Genevieve smiled, genuine for a moment. "Perhaps." Meanwhile, Julian Wexley, back in Larkwood, plodded quietly. His letters to influential acquaintances sowed seeds of doubt about Sebastian's intentions in Maplewood, threatening the fragile peace Isla had found. One evening, a letter arrived for Isla. "Be wary of those who smile too easily, Miss Everly. The town's eyes are never kind to those who leave and return changed." Isla folded the note slowly, a chill creeping down her spine. Sebastian caught her looking at the paper. "We face many storms," he said, pulling her close. "But you won't face them alone." As winter deepened, so too did the bonds between Isla and Sebastian. Yet around every corner, whispers and shadows lingered, a reminder that love is as much about weathering tempests as it is about basking in sunlight. And in the heart of Maplewood, a new chapter was just beginning, one of hope, courage, and the promise of redemption. Winter's grip tightened around Maplewood, blanketing the estate in snow and silence. But beneath the white calm, tension simmered like embers waiting to blaze. One frosty morning, as Isla reviewed ledgers in the great study, a sudden knock startled her. Opening the door, she found a messenger holding a sealed envelope bearing the emblem of Larkwood's local magistrate. With trembling hands, Isla broke the seal. The letter was an official summons regarding an inquiry about financial irregularities linked to Sebastian's family estate in Larkwood. Confusion and fear swept over her. Was this a deliberate attempt to destabilize Sebastian's reputation? Or worse, a trap set by Julian's unseen hand? She sought Sebastian immediately. His face darkened as he read the letter. "This is old business," he said grimly. "An accusation meant to tarnish my name and family." Isla clenched her fists. "We can fight this. Together." Meanwhile, in Larkwood, Julian Wexley met secretly with influential locals. His cold smile betrayed the lengths he was willing to go. "A scandal," he whispered, "will shatter their fragile peace. They think distance will protect them, but shadows follow." Back at Maplewood, Genevieve watched the unfolding drama with sharp eyes. Alone in the candlelit hallway, she confided in Isla. "There are things you don't know about Sebastian's past," she said quietly. "Things that could ruin everything." Isla felt the weight of the secret hanging heavy between them. As the inquiry began, letters and rumors from Larkwood poured in, whispers of betrayal, debts, and lost fortunes. The estate's stability shook. In the midst of chaos, Sebastian and Isla's bond was tested. Nights were spent poring over documents, meeting with lawyers, and confronting ghosts of the past. Yet, amid the storm, moments of tenderness shone through: a shared smile in the frost, a quiet touch after a long day, a promise whispered beneath the stars. But the greatest surprise came when a visitor arrived at Maplewood: Lady Evelyn Montague, an old family friend and protector. Her presence brought new hope but also a mystery. She held letters from Sebastian's late father, revealing truths that could clear his name or deepen the intrigue. Isla and Sebastian faced choices that would define not only their future but the legacy of the Everleigh and Langley families. The stage was set for a confrontation not just with external foes, but with the fears and doubts within themselves. And somewhere, watching and waiting, Julian prepared his final move. The thaw of early spring brought with it a stirring sense of change. Yet, beneath the budding branches of Maplewood's ancient oaks, the tension between past and future clawed ever deeper. The letters from the past. Lady Evelyn Montague arrived at Maplewood under the guise of offering counsel and support. She was a dignified woman, her silver-streaked hair pulled back into an elegant chignon, her eyes sharp and calculating behind delicate spectacles. In the grand study, she handed Sebastian a bundle of yellowed letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. "These belong to your father," she said softly. "They contain truths long buried." Sebastian untied the ribbon with trembling fingers. As he unfolded the brittle pages, Isla stood silently nearby, sensing the gravity of the moment. The letters detailed a complex web of financial entanglements, rivalries, and an accusation of betrayal that had fractured the Langley family's reputation years before Sebastian's arrival in Larkwood. One letter stood out, a confession written in haste, revealing that the true culprit behind the financial scandal was a distant cousin who had long sought to usurp the family fortune. "This changes everything," Sebastian whispered, eyes wide with disbelief and relief. The battle for reputation. Armed with the new evidence, Sebastian and Isla traveled to Larkwood to confront the magistrate and the council. The halls of power buzzed with quiet menace, old alliances, and grudges etched into every face. Julian Wexley was there, his smirk colder than ever, his eyes gleaming with triumph as he greeted Sebastian with feigned politeness. "You brought your trophies, I see," Julian said, voice dripping with condescension. Sebastian met his gaze steadily. "Truth is not a trophy, Julian. It's a shield." The council agreed to reopen the inquiry. Rumors began to shift, whispering in favor of Sebastian's innocence. But Julian was not so easily defeated. He had one last card to play. The intrigue of Genevieve. Back in Maplewood, Isla received a letter from Genevieve, urging caution. "Not all who smile in your favor are friends. Watch closely those closest to you. Isla's mind raced. Was Genevieve a friend or a foe? The tension between them had been thickening like a storm cloud, and Isla could no longer ignore the subtle manipulations. One evening, she followed Genevieve after a meeting with Mr. Hargrave, only to witness a whispered conversation with an unknown visitor cloaked in shadows. The visitor handed Genevieve a sealed envelope, the kind that sent chills down the spine. Isla retreated, heart pounding. Confessions in the garden. Sebastian found Isla the next morning in the estate's walled garden, staring at a withered rose bush. "You're troubled," he said gently. Isla turned, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "There's so much I don't know. About your past, about your alliances, about those around us." Sebastian took her hands in his. "We will face it all together. No more secrets." She nodded, leaning into him. Julian's final gambit. Back in Larkwood, Julian's machinations reached a fever pitch. He leaked forged letters to local newspapers, attempting to discredit Sebastian and Isla. The scandal threatened to unravel their fragile victories. But the community's opinion was shifting. Many, tired of the constant whispers and intrigues, began to rally behind Sebastian, admiring his steadfastness and Isla's grace under fire. The turning point. At the annual Maplewood Spring Festival, with the whole town gathered beneath blooming cherry blossoms, Sebastian took Isla's hand in front of friends and strangers alike. "I stand here not as a man fighting his past, but as one building a future," he declared. Isla smiled, her heart full. "And I stand with him, no longer afraid of the shadows, but ready to walk into the light." As they danced beneath the blossoms, the crowd cheered not just for a couple, but for hope, resilience, and new beginnings. Spring's gentle bloom masked the storm gathering beneath the surface of Maplewood's tranquil life. The festival's joy had barely settled when old wounds began to ache anew, threatening to tear apart the fragile harmony Isla and Sebastian had fought so hard to build. A mysterious visitor. One chilly morning, just as dawn spilled its pale light over the estate, a figure cloaked in grey arrived unannounced at the gates of Maplewood Manor. The carriage was modest but well kept, and the driver spoke little. Isla answered the door, heart pounding with unease. The visitor introduced herself as Madeline Forsyth, a woman connected to the Langley family's shadowed past. "I carry a message from those who wish you to be warned," Madeline said quietly, stepping inside with an air of quiet authority. Sebastian, returning from his morning rounds, joined them, his expression guarded. "What message?" he asked. Madeline hesitated before handing over a folded parchment, sealed with an unfamiliar crest. "It's a threat," she said. "There are forces who want your downfall, and they're closer than you think." Unraveling alliances. Isla's suspicion immediately turned to Genevieve. Over the past weeks, her subtle manipulations had grown more pronounced, and Madeline's arrival seemed no coincidence. Determined to uncover the truth, Isla began discreet investigations, questioning servants and observing Genevieve's movements. The picture that emerged was chilling. Genevieve had been in contact with unknown parties in Larkwood, possibly feeding information or worse. Sebastian's burden. Sebastian struggled with the resurfacing threats. The burden of his family's past weighed heavily on him, and the pressure threatened to fracture his resolve. One evening, alone by the fire, he confided in Isla. "My father's mistakes were mine to bear," he said. "But I refuse to let them define our future." Isla took his hand firmly. "We'll face this storm side by side." Julian's shadow looms. Back in Larkwood, Julian Wexley tightened his grip on local power, using every influence to isolate Sebastian and Isla. His network of allies whispered doubts to townsfolk and spread rumors designed to erode trust. Julian's final plan involved discrediting Madeline Forsyth, painting her as a fraud and a spy. But with Madeline now firmly at Maplewood, the battle lines were drawn. A night of reckoning. The tension exploded one night when a fire broke out in the east wing of Maplewood Manor. The cause was suspicious, and suspicion immediately fell on Genevieve. Isla confronted her in the smoke-filled hallway. "Why?" Isla demanded, coughing. "Why betray us?" Genevieve's face twisted into a bitter smile. "Because power isn't given, Isla. It's taken. And you've been holding it too long." Sebastian arrived just in time to pull Isla away. The fire was contained, but the damage was done not just to the manor but to their trust, healing and resolve. In the aftermath, the family gathered, bruised but unbroken. "We've seen the worst of what secrets can do," Sebastian said firmly. "But also the strength of what truth and love can build." Isla nodded. "This is not the end. It's a beginning." Madeline revealed hidden documents exonerating Sebastian's family fully, dealing a heavy blow to Julian's campaign. The path forward. With the threat diminished, Isla and Sebastian focused on rebuilding not just the manor but their lives. Their love, tempered in fire and shadow, blossomed stronger. Together, they stepped toward a future unshackled by past mistakes, ready for whatever new stories awaited. The morning sun filtered softly through the tall windows of Maplewood Manor, casting golden rays over the stillness of the great hall. The air was crisp with spring's promise, and with it came a profound sense of renewal. A ceremony of hearts. The day had finally come, the day Isla and Sebastian would stand before their closest friends and family to declare their vows, not merely as a union of love but as a triumph over trials past. The manor's gardens were alive with blooming flowers, roses, lilacs, and wild daisies swaying gently in the breeze. The townsfolk of Maplewood had gathered, their faces radiant with joy and hope. Mrs. Everly, resplendent in soft lavender, wiped tears from her eyes. Even Lena and Myra, playful and spirited, sat quietly, sensing the gravity of the moment. Sebastian, dressed in a tailored navy suit with a silver boutonniere, waited with a calm strength that belied the storm he had weathered. When Isla appeared, her gown simple but elegant, her hair adorned with fresh blossoms, the gathered crowd gasped softly. Their eyes met, and in that gaze was the story of their journey, of misunderstandings overcome, shadows faced, and love fiercely defended. Words that moved mountains. The ceremony was held beneath an ancient oak, its branches arching like a cathedral ceiling. The officiant, a kindly minister who had witnessed many seasons of Maplewood's lives, spoke with reverence. Love, he said, is not merely a feeling but a choice. A daily act of courage, forgiveness, and hope. Isla and Sebastian exchanged vows that spoke not only of devotion but of resilience. I vow, Isla whispered, to stand with you through light and darkness, to trust when shadows fall, and to build a future on truth. Sebastian replied, I vow to honor the love that has transformed me, to protect you fiercely, and to walk beside you as equals, friends, and partners. The crowd erupted into applause, the sound echoing through the trees like a joyous symphony. A new chapter begins. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, music, and the warmth of community. Old wounds softened beneath the glow of new beginnings. Genevieve, having left Maplewood after the fire and its aftermath, was but a memory, a cautionary tale of ambition unchecked. Julian Wexley's influence waned in Larkwood as truth and justice prevailed. His last attempts at sabotage were met with quiet but firm resistance. The promise of tomorrow. As dusk fell, Isla and Sebastian found themselves alone on the veranda, wrapped in a shared blanket against the cool night. Do you believe, Isla asked softly, that we've truly found peace? Sebastian smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Peace, he said, isn't the absence of storms. It's the strength to dance in the rain. They kissed beneath the starlit sky, a promise etched in time. Epilogue. Years later, Maplewood thrived as a place of kindness, resilience, and love. Isla and Sebastian's legacy was not just of wealth or status, but of courage and grace. Their children played in the orchard where once shadows had lingered, and stories of their parents' journey were told not as tales of tragedy, but as lessons in hope. The Everly and Langley names became intertwined in the hearts of a community that had learned the true meaning of family. And somewhere, in the soft whisper of the wind through the trees, the past finally gave way to a bright, unshakable future. Title: Whispers of Maplewood, a tale of love, shadows, and redemption. Description: In the quiet countryside town of Maplewood, Isla Everly and Sebastian Langley's lives intertwine amidst secrets, social intrigues, and the weight of family legacies. From the glittering halls of Aldridge Ball to the shadowed threads lurking in whispered letters, their journey is one of resilience, trust, and the courage to defy societal expectations. As past betrayals resurface and unseen enemies plot their downfall, Isla and Sebastian must choose whether to let darkness consume them or to build a future forged in truth and unwavering love. Whispers of Maplewood is a richly woven tale of passion, mystery, and hope where every shadow hides a story waiting to be told.